Hi guys, good morning. Amplify morning briefing, Friday 24th of August, just gone 8:30 here in London. We'll start by having a quick look over the markets from yesterday, what's happened overnight and what could happen throughout the day into the weekend as well. Let's have a quick look over Euro, or the dollar in general, to get things going. In what has been relatively lower volumes, trickier circumstances, the euro actually today has been, or yesterday I should say, it was pretty good, and a couple of good opportunities. Technically the market reacted quite well on this lower volume as well, and no real sort of driver in early morning trade, especially for the euro dollar. You had this sort of bull flag, the break of that, a really nice push above. Here you can see on the first rectangle push up towards the pivot, which should have been obviously an obvious area of resistance at the time. Nice double top for price to come back down. We had a breakthrough, and it was on this sort of first sort of test of the break here. I'll just draw a quick arrow. You also had the dollar elsewhere weakening. We'll come on to the pound, the gold chart as well. At that period, dollar weakened, pushed higher, and was some good opportunities for those that were still long at the time to get the targets that they were after, really. It wasn't until the back end of the day that the dollar came back to strengthen. We in the dollar index itself at the time, we had actually weakened a lot closer to the 95 handle, which has obviously been in talk over the last sort of few weeks and even months. But then we did recover. You can see a sort of break of those lows, that trend line that had held so well in the morning, break through, and we had then broke lower. And to be honest, we're literally trading now almost on the break of that trend line anyway. But technically it was good yesterday. I know some people took advantage of that. So well done. Definitely some good opportunities. We have a look at the pound as well. You can see similar sort of time period of when we started to push higher. The dollar was weakening. Not really any Brexit related comments moving the market too much yesterday. It was more the sort of dollar sort of driving price here on sort of a few technical breaks and push higher, and with the pivot acting as a bit of resistance in euros. Similar story for the pound, which was also some support from previous day on Wednesday as well. And then into the back end of the session, dollar started to strengthen, and we can see we broke through that low. Similar sort of time to when euro did it as well. Australian dollar, so we'll come on to this in a bit more detail today. Obviously another change at the top in terms of the PM overnight. However, you can see the initial push through just above my camera here. There's due to the sort of all the uncertainty that was going on, and you had a continuation into sort of the afternoon here in the UK, of when those lows broke, and we continue to push down a bit more. Also, good area of resistance yesterday, where I know a couple of people did get in to target what the low was at that time. Regarding the dollar yen, the morning we had a bit of dollar weakness. We came back down towards the pivot area, but it wasn't really until the dollar strength came in sort of 3 o'clock onwards that we pushed higher, and you can see what had been tested once, twice, 3 times. We did then push on, and this area I've got marked up was a previous high from last week, I believe. You can see we got hit there on the 16th high very quickly. So markets correlations working quite well yesterday. Dollar strength to weakness, we've still got that sort of uncertainty around this 95 handle. Again, I'll be looking for where we get that weekly close for perhaps a bit of further clarification here on, are we going to get continuation of maybe the recent couple of day trend of this week of dollar following Trump's comments, or actually is it just a momentary blip for then the dollar to strengthen, and we get further pushes to the downside for a couple of these pairs. Oil, really nice trade yesterday, and in fact recent couple of days it has been good. I must say that usually a relatively difficult product for many people, but yesterday was super. You had the pivot, you had a lot of price action around 67.34, the previous sort of high before DOE. A lot was going on there. Price came back down, and I know a couple of people got in pivot, and I know a couple of people got in on that high, faded in around there to target, well, the eventual sort of high of the sort of the session around 68, so coming out before. So really nice trade. We've continued to push on this morning, as you can see, up to almost 68.5, pushing through the high that we made on the 22nd, so Wednesday evening. Nice opportunity to sort of get in if you were at the screen at 4:15 in the morning, and then you can see it has continued to push on. Failed tested the high now, so I'll be focusing on that. But yeah, decent opportunities all round, really. Nice technical charts. These are kind of the markets that I prefer anyway. We'll come on to what could possibly drive the markets from a more fundamental perspective. Yeah, decent opportunities in the States following the cash open. We pushed higher, made a new high for the last couple of days, broke through Wednesday's high. Price then came back down after cash open, not just in the S&P, Dow Jones and Nasdaq did follow through. We've had sort of, the trade talks are obviously ongoing, but sort of stalled really between US and China overnight, so that's sort of weighing on them. But you know, anyone that knows my view on the trade talks, it's always just a momentary blip before we continue against the trend that followed from the trade talks. So I do believe we'll have another sort of push to the upside in the short term for equities, and I think it's also worth clearing up that we have not made the all-time high. I've seen on Twitter last couple of days, even Bloomberg suggesting we had, but not on the spot market, not on the futures here. You can see we still got a bit of room to go, probably about 0.5%. Can we get there today? It remains to be seen. If we get a close above there, you know, it'll be just another sort of further sort of push to the upside sentiment-wise. Definitely one to keep an eye on today. Just sort of hanging around that pivot level as we speak. Nasdaq, similar, cash open, push higher. Bit of profit taking, bit of negative sentiment, trade talks, whatever you want to call it. We came back lower to find support, pivot, lower the day, and we have sort of drifted higher in the early trades so far. Gold, which you know has had a bit of a, if I just make this a shorter time, a longer time frame, you know, we've had a bit of a rally, if you like, coming back from the 16th. What would that be? 16th would be last Thursday, and we've just sort of, you know, slowed down that brief rally for the last couple of days, and there's a couple of good opportunities here when the dollar had been sort of strengthening into the afternoon. We came back down and broke the low, the high of the session, and the S1s worked quite well technically. We probably got a bit of a trend line break there going into the afternoon as well. So decent trade opportunities yesterday. I'll be obviously a bit cautious today. You've got the everything going on with Jackson Hole. You've got bank holiday on Monday in the UK, so volume towards the sort of the middle back end of the European session might start to sort of die down a bit. So profit expectations, I would be sort of reeling them in, perhaps not expecting too much from those. But technically, yesterday markets acted quite well, and I would say that this week as well in general. There's been some half good opportunities in the currency pairs, looking to sort of, you know, play it technically from support, resistance, buy low, sell high. How the markets are trading now, just how they've opened. The DAX, let's bring this into picture. Up and down, it's gone back to its usual sort of craziness, right? Between the pivot, between the R1 contained for now. We are starting to get squeezed in. The ranges for the day is certainly getting smaller. Taking us back here, so Monday would be the 20th, right? So yeah, you can see nice push from the open. Tuesday, nice push. Thursday and so on. We're really starting to get squeezed in. It does get that feeling, perhaps not today, but one to keep an eye on the sort of the top end and low end of these ranges where prices are starting to get squeezed in. We could see a big push either way. Which direction do I prefer? I'd say, to be honest, to the upside. Maybe it's that we get that let's get that arrow out again. Nice little push through here, targeting the sort of the high of the week, where you'd imagine a few stops are, where people, you know, got trapped going long above R1 as well, and obviously I'm pointing with my hand, but the high that we had also around the 14th. Anyway, just an idea to bear in mind. Will the volume be there today? Friday, notoriously quite a slow day for the DAX, so remains to be seen, but one to keep an eye on anyway. Overnight, let's get a couple of stories in the mix here. You've got the new Australian PM, Scott Morrison. Malcolm Turnbull ousted as PM overnight, so this is their 6th in 10 years. Quick question, answers in the chat. Fingers on the buzzer. Which other country has had more than 6 in the last 10 years? Write those answers in the chat, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Couple interesting points if we bring up the Australian dollar on this sort of story as it developed. We have seen a bit of recovery. So we mentioned overnight overnight yesterday I should say, you had the Australian dollar weakening, price pushed down, broke the lows, and really on that sort of announcement of the new PM, we have pushed higher. And I would actually now probably favour an upside break. Not saying that I think it's definitely going to happen, but that would be the trade idea that I'd be looking for. A push of those highs, targeting the resistance from yesterday as a nice sort of trade to the upside there for the Aussie dollar. That would be my focus for now. Takes me back to when you had the whole situation about, is David Cameron going to resign, the political uncertainty there where the pound weakened. Theresa May comes in, you had a brief rally there for the pound as well. So it takes that sort of initial uncertainty for the down move, understandably, and then you get that sort of more clarity, currency strengthens, and you've seen that a few times here. So would favour the upside for now. Worth noting with the Australian situation, yes, 6 times in 10 does sound bad. The last 5 prime ministers, got a couple of stats for you here, have served just 11 years or less than 11 years between them. However, the 5 before that lasted 35, so average of 7. So nowadays it is definitely a case in Australia where the sort of the leadership of the PM is nowhere near as long as, say, the Western sort of world. They go to the polls at least every 3 years. Over here we know in the UK it's not at least until 2021. Whether they wait that long remains to be seen, but just something to bear in mind. Is this a massive story? Is this a massive shock in terms of the change in leadership in Canberra? I think it's almost going to be pushed to one side, and I think for the Australian dollar, we're going to now focus more again on China, on the trade talks, which has really sort of dampened the Australian dollar really since the beginning of the year. You can see here, this is a daily chart. So you can remove the pivots to clean it up for you, and you can see look, you have a couple of peaks and troughs, but we are coming lower still. Worth keeping an eye on. We didn't quite get there. It would have been a nice level around that 74. I know I put it on Twitter not too long ago, but didn't quite make it up. But definitely one to bear in mind, that trend line coming from those 2018 highs. Obviously in the mix there you've got the dollar strengthening, but I feel PM situation pushed to a side now. We focus on bigger things. Yeah, Italy, Mike. Not a surprise, I guess, but always Italy. Mentioned as well, overnight you had the US-China trade talks sort of end with little progress. That sort of has weighed on equities again briefly, or that's the reason they're giving for that sort of profit-taking sell-off, if you like. Again, blipping the zone. I think we'll continue to push higher, whether it be into the end of the week or not. I think does remain to be seen. I believe we will continue to push higher. S&P, just in terms of a trade opportunity, we are actually coming up to the high of the day, which is also the high we had just before we pushed higher post cash open. So we've had some decent price action around here in previous sort of sessions. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. Maybe you would rather see a confirmed breakthrough before taking that trade on. Definitely one to keep an eye on this morning, perhaps more into the afternoon. Just starting to see silver just at the corner. I know a few people do watch that pushing higher. Gold kind of trying to follow suit as the dollar is under a tad bit of pressure this morning. We've seen euro push high. I'm just going to switch through these charts relatively quickly. And pound as well, not too far away from its highs. I'll come on to a couple of these charts later on as we have a look more at the calendar, what could drive prices today. We just zoom in to make this a bit clearer. Data wise, we've had some lower tier German data this morning. We've got durable goods into the afternoon, not expecting too much to happen there, 1:30 UK time. Got the rig count 6, again not expecting that to be a driver for the remainder of what will be the remainder of the week from then. It's all about the speakers here, with Jackson Hole continuing to go on. The big one that everyone's looking out for let me just go back here. I think I just didn't transition there, so let's have a quick look again. Yeah, 130 durable goods. Baker Hughes rig count not expecting to do much. Jackson Hole is going to be the driver here. In terms of potential, anyway, I should say, obviously, I think ears on the wires and eyes on Twitter, otherwise. But we have, Jackson Hole. Let's have a quick look at, in terms of the speakers before him. You have Feds, Bullard and Mester speaking first of all to CNBC, 12:30 and 1:30, and then half hour after that speech they then go speak to Bloomberg. So much like those that watch say the football interviews post game, it will be like they do their Sky Sports, then they'll do their BBC. The first one's the main one that gets reported, and also the comments that usually happen in the next interview are very much the same sort of questions, same answers. They've already answered it before, they're not going to slip up, you wouldn't imagine. But also, are they really going to say anything before the main man comes on himself? And is the main man Jerome Powell, is he going to buckle under the recent talk from Donald Trump? I would say very unlikely, but that also makes a good opportunity if in fact he was going to. If he was to give any indication about the sort of the rate hike trajectory, or even September, then yeah, you could perhaps see a bit more. Well, you would see a lot more sort of dollar weakness following on from those Trump comments. But if he stands his ground, you may well see a sort of a hawkish reaction from that. So potential short-term volatility move into the afternoon from Jackson Hole. It wouldn't surprise me, but I would just bear in mind into the sort of the close of the day, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock onwards UK time, I'd imagine the volume really is going to start to sort of die down as people look for their long weekends to enjoy what's left of the sun, as it seems today could well be the peak as the weather starts to go down. People wearing coats in the city today as well. So yeah, quick look over that calendar. Speakers out throughout the day. I'll post in this tweet as well that's got the times on for you as well. But yeah, early morning I would expect to be similar to last couple in the charts. It's been a bit more technical and not really looking to be too rushed in terms of sort of profit targets. Have the patience on a morning like this, with perhaps bigger things to come into the afternoon. Trade opportunities today, or levels that I'm half interested in. Obviously very aware that people will look at the market different ways, but in terms of this pound pushing higher, technically I like the look of yesterday's low and pivot, and if we can get a confirmed sort of test around there to continue this sort of move lower. I do believe overall the sentiment is still to the downside, regardless of what the dollar is doing. Again, I've heard on the wires this morning, the whole Brexit no deal, whatever situation is it's very unlikely for October, but it wouldn't be a massive issue if November. It keeps getting pushed back, and that talk I do believe remains rather sort of negative overall for the pound. But I'll be looking to trade it more technically today, and I think yesterday's low pivot area does look relatively good. Mentioned earlier that the dollar's slightly weakening. We've seen euro push higher. Pivot's not the worst place in the world to be looking to get a retest of that breakthrough. You've also got an area where you could sort of have your stop behind on that sort of trend. That would be the point where maybe this trade doesn't work at all. But pivot last couple of days or has acted quite well. Yesterday's resistance, day before, let me get rid of this trend line, day before is quite good support as well. So yeah, technically not too bad, the euro recently. So I'll be keeping an eye on this pivot now as we sort of come into near enough 9 o'clock. Equities, I talked about the S&P just coming up to that high. We found a bit of resistance around there on that first test, so even more reason to sort of keep an eye on it. As we've seen, it's already been respected. Those stops sort of build up there. You could get a further push through, maybe more into the afternoon, but something I would be focusing on as well there. So summary overnight, equities came under a bit of pressure amid sort of trade talks. That seems to have already been recovered, and I'd imagine we will get a test of that all-time high not too far away to come relatively soon. Oil still elevated, actually pushing to a high just now actually. In terms of this longer chart, let me just remove everything on here. Quite an interesting level, not too far away from where we're trading, using that sort of breakthrough that we had towards the early part of July. You can see we're almost coming up to the sort of top end of that trend there. Definitely this week it will be important to see whether we can close above or below that. This is on the daily continuation chart, so what a lot of people will look at from a longer term perspective as well. So I'll be looking on the futures. It looks to sort of come in around your sort of 68, 67s before $69 as well. So definitely keep an eye on that going forward. I'll put a couple charts in throughout the day. I'll be on the mic as well. Any questions, as usual, please do get them in the chat. Hope you all have a great weekend, and hopefully tomorrow Arsenal can get back to winning ways and maybe learn something. Well, we should have learned something from the Australian PM in that replacing someone every sort of few years isn't a bad idea, whereas Wenger stayed way too long. But I hope you all have a great weekend. I'll catch you in the chat and see you all very soon.